Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for the Power Rangers basic 30th anniversary figures. I think that's what I'm going to call them. I mean, they're just kind of labeled as their regular figures. They're just like, hey, red, black, and yellow Ranger figures. But they are kind of these weird special releases that are kind of in the same vein as those Megazord retro figure releases, if you remember, that kind of skirt this weird line where it's like right between a casual kids toy line one and a collector line in terms of the marketing, which is just weird. And they also make a big deal about this VHS packaging, which I'm going to go over that first just because it's, I guess, considered a quote-unquote feature. So let's get these idiots out of the way first. So this is the packaging. You can see it's reminiscent of the Megazord packaging, which is kind of meant to be like a VHS slipcase, which, I don't know, it's not my jam. I'm not nostalgic for the 90s. I've never been a person to be like, hey, I long for the days when things were more inconvenient, especially not for VHSs. I sort of get what they're going for, but I also don't necessarily see the appeal personally. I feel like I've mentioned this in the reviews for the Megazords, but I think it would at least hit more of a note or a chord or whatever you want to hit something if they kind of made the packages reminiscent of the actual packaging from back in the day, rather than something totally new. Not to mention, I find the Megazord ones to be more appealing because they have kick-ass Megazord art. And this is like art of just the figure, but I prefer some cool art of the actual Ranger. But yeah, this is the packaging you get, and it's apparently a feature. So I don't know, maybe it's your thing. It's not my thing personally. I think it drives up the price for this sort of collector's line idea, and I think it's kind of needless, which you'll see me talk about here in a minute. But yeah, they're kind of in a similar vein of that. Talking about the figures themselves, though, these are basically glorified basic figures. I'm going to be doing some more comparisons here to some past versions, but just to show you that, here is actually a basic figure release for MMPR Red they have already done. You may have forgotten they did it, but they did a 3-pack for the Dino team-up back in the day that had MMPR Red, Dino Charge Pink, and Dino Thunder Blue. And this is the same exact mold. The only difference is, as you can see, it is much brighter, vibrant red, a little bit more of a consistent red. The visor, obviously, you can see is filled in better and more fully, and there is a difference in the belt. It's funny because it looks brighter and more vibrant on the new figure, but this one actually has details for the coin, whereas this one does not, which is rather interesting. So basically, it's a basic figure, just with a slightly more vibrant paint job, and they're marketing it as a collector's figure. It does have a bit of a weird mold, like it has the standard basic figure mold you're used to getting, but it is a little bit awkward around the legs. I don't know, because the legs are always a little bit bent like this, but this one on mine, on red at least, is a little bit more awkwardly bent, where it looks like somebody broke his knee, and he permanently is in this weird sort of like I broke my knee pose, which is kind of strange. But you have the same articulation. You have this little hinge joint here. Mine's a little bit stiff right now, which moves around. You got a single elbow joint here, also a little bit stiff. A little bit of a hinge joint here, back and forth. Single knee joint right there. You can't really move out as much as other figures. You can a little bit, but not as much as something like Lightning figures where they're meant to. Very loose joints on all these. Like, not terrible where it's like flopping around, but they don't feel solid at all, to be honest. And then you do have the head articulation here, and all of them are the same, and all of them kind of have a slightly loose, probably is going to become fairly loose as we go on type of feel to it, which is disappointing. They do include some accessories. Red includes his power sword, which is done in actually just a white mold rather than the traditional gray, which I guess is kind of a nice change of pace. I think maybe it's meant to be an homage to the fact that the weapons used to be white back in the day, like in the old fliphead figures and stuff. And then he includes a bladed version of the Blade Blaster. The other two just include, I'll just go ahead and show you, the other two just include the blaster mode. I guess it's kind of nice to have variety. I'm sure there's going to be people that complain that they don't have all three. That's something that never usually bothers me. I feel like for the price of these, they should maybe include all three, or at the very least, maybe each one of them should have included a different one. Like, one of them would have the sheathed one. That's not the most exciting, but at least it would have been variety. Like, I don't know. They also all include a little sort of Pog power coin, which isn't exactly the most accurate. It's basically just a plastic coin that says Power Rangers on the back, in this cheapo font or whatever. And then you have the, like, shiny coin. It's not the best looking, and it's not the most accurate. I find it harmless. I'm going to be honest, if this price could be driven down, I wouldn't need them, but at least it's kind of different from the dozens of other random MMPR coins I have. But yeah, I guess that's supposed to be a selling point. But as you saw with comparisons, again, it's basically the same exact figure as this with just an improved paint job. Just to show you, though, it does include a more accurate helmet than the original Lightning sculpt. This is the gold armor version, but it does sport the same original old head sculpt that this originally started with, which is more inaccurate. They are fixing it now, though, but it's worth noting that it at least has the more accurate head sculpt compared to the original Lightning release. However, here's the updated one that's in a funny pose because he kind of fell over doing his classic pose. Now he looks like he's half-heartedly posing. But this is the metallic figure, which includes the updated head mold, which is a lot more accurate. Honestly, these are basically both the same accuracy, just a little bit scaled differently. The updated head sculpt can also be seen on the female red figure from the Trini release, and there will presumably be an updated head sculpt that will be more accurate for the Lightning figures with the 30th anniversary releases. But those are some past comparisons there just to show that off. Let's go ahead and go over the others now. So we got yellow here, which is weird because her head sculpt is honestly overall fine. It's almost like a sliding scale, where red's is the most accurate, hers is fine, like is accurate enough, could be better, and then black's isn't all that accurate. She does have the female mold, which is basically just the slightly skinnier version of this, but with the same kind of articulation, same sort of like loose joint problems and stuff that I said, which kind of just feels overall a little bit cheaper. It's honestly an overall fine MMPR yellow figure, though. If I could only have one real complaint in regards to scaling or whatever, just for a basic figure standard, is that she doesn't have much of a neck, but that's not usually a deal breaker for me or anything like that. That sounded like a weird thing to say. That sounded like I was talking about a dating profile. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I got weird with that one. Here it is next to the Lightning figure. So you can see they actually kind of have a comparable head sculpt, if we're being honest. They're actually pretty close to each other, which is why I say it's honestly fine. Like, of the MMPR Lightning figures, yellow needed the least updates. I mean, I think they're doing one now. Yeah, they are doing one now. And I think it does look better, and I'm sure it would look better, but I think MMPR yellow was the one that I felt needed the least update. So it's actually fairly comparable to the OG Lightning release. And then, just for the sake of it, here is a comparison. This is the metallic one, which honestly, I think the metallic updated head sculpt, I don't even know if it was updated or if it was just psychological, but you can see that it's actually not all that different from the Lightning one in comparison to how different Red's is from the OG Lightning release. Then you have Black Rangers, which is interesting, because when these first came out, I was going to say, oh, this is going to be funny. Like, the basic figure like this is also going to have a more accurate head sculpt than the OG Lightning release, but it actually has a fairly comparable one. I mean, everything else about the figure is fine, the same basic paint sculpt. I mean, for basically a basic figure standards, the paint overall looks fine. You know, they got all the details they need to. The main problem is with the loose joints, but the paint is, you know, honestly fine for what it needs to be. I don't really have a huge problem with it for that, and the helmets look nice and shiny, to give them props for that. Again, same articulation as Red, same base mold, but just for some comparisons here, let's talk about some comparisons, right? So this is the OG Lightning release, and you can see they have kind of similar helmets. This one's a lot bulkier and kind of sticks out more, but it's kind of a similar principle, where it's not quite accurate. It's a little bit pinched. It looked like they took the front of the helmet and pinched it a little bit. It's honestly closer to the original inaccurate Lightning helmet. And then here we have the updated release they just recently released that has a much more accurate helmet sculpt. So you can see that there. So if you're on the hunt for the most accurate helmet sculpt, this is the one you're going to want to get. But you can see that's kind of funny to me, mainly because it was kind of a joke when the first MMPR Red basic figure released, that it was like funny that it had a more accurate head sculpt than the Lightning figure. And then this one doesn't do that. Not that I'm as harsh on it because it's not a collector's line. Well, it kind of is, but you know what I mean. I just find it to be funny, but it's at least kind of worth noting, which is interesting. Now let's go ahead and get to the final verdict. Before I forget, black and yellow also include their white sculpted weapons, which honestly are overall pretty decent sculpts. They're just not painted, but I didn't expect them to be. They also both include their quote-unquote power coins as well. Now, as far as these go, it's a bit of a very mixed bag. Looking at them in a vacuum, not talking about the context of how they were released and stuff, my only real problems with them, if I was just looking at them as basic figures, is Red's slightly misshapen knee, which gives him a slightly weird pose, and the overall cheaper feeling of the loose joints. Otherwise, if these were basic figures, they're honestly fine. They look fine for what they need to be. You know, the Black Ranger's helmet isn't the most accurate, but it's kind of in line with the other ones from Beast Morphers and Dino Fury, so if they were just basic figures, they're honestly okay and fine for that. But it's all about the context in which these were released. These are being released in this weird, midway, not sure what they want to be point, where they're the quality of a basic figure for the kids or the casual line, but are marketed kind of in a nostalgic collector way. As a result, they're like $16.99 in comparison to the average $9.99 price of a basic figure. These are absolutely not worth the $16.99 price tag. You know, in my opinion, I think they're kind of a scam in a way, because they're putting them in these packages and like, oh, there's power coins and it's like a collector's release, and they're just absolutely not worth it. The only way I could recommend them in their current state is if you find them on sale, which is maybe possible. Honestly, I think these should have just been basic figures. They should have just been put in the regular packaging. You know, I don't need the power coins. I think at a $9.99 price point, these actually would have been fine releases and would have gotten an even more positive review, because as a $9.99 basic figure, they'd hit this kind of nice sweet spot for something that kids can buy, or very casual fans that maybe want to pick up a Jason figure because they get excited about the anniversary of the show they watched when they were a kid, but they don't want to buy a Lightning Collection figure. So I can't really recommend these. They sit at a weird spot where they're basically expensive, glorified basic figures. You're much better off either waiting for the upcoming remastered Lightning Collection MMPR figures, or maybe trying to find one of the older ones on the aftermarket. Like the OG Black Ranger Lightning release isn't the most accurate, but I can recommend it over this. And honestly, this one just came out, and you can probably find a pretty good deal for it. Actually, that's the old one. This one just came out, and you can probably find a pretty good deal for it. So yeah, these are largely unnecessary releases that are capitalizing on nostalgia to get you to buy a more expensive figure, and they're basically just basic figures. And also, who is nostalgic for the VHS slipcases? I just don't get it. But anyway, that's about it for this one. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.